Hello. All year on Crimewatch we show you the clues and invite you to play detective.
Tonight on Crimewatch Solve, we show you how those calls have worked, how viewers have helped bring some of Britain's worst criminals to justice.
How 30 years on, a Crimewatch viewer came up with the name and the details that identified one of Britain's most appalling killers.
How 3 viewers named a serial robber and how he was so shocked at seeing himself on TV.
And how almost 40 viewers spotted a drug dealer on the run, but he turned kidnapper when he knew he was cornered.
This is the only place in the country where the police take more calls than we do in the Crimewatch studio. This is the 999 Emergency Centre at New Scotland Yard, the biggest and the busiest emergency phone centre in the world. To give you an illustration, Crimewatch sometimes takes over 2,000 calls an evening. Here, they take 10,000 every day. Later in the programme, we'll show you some of the drama behind these calls and some surprisingly absurd stuff too.
But first, to a case which provoked all sorts of responses, including victims who'd never come forward before. Our appeal was on 2 rapes in Sussex. There wasn't much to go on.
I would never publicly go at the start of inquiry to say we're going to get a result. But I have to be honest, deep down I knew we would on this one.
When you think of Brighton and Hove, you probably think of lovely seaside resorts, friendly places with a holiday atmosphere. That was the impression of one young woman who was thinking of moving there. She decided to stay with her best friend in Hove to celebrate New Year's Eve before she finally made up her mind. But she saw a very different side to the town.
Just to finish the night off with a walk.
I thought the new town road was up there, but I've been up there and no one seems to know a thing.
Yeah, it's just up here on the right. I'll show you the way.
So there's a shortcut through here.
Oh, okay.
He had the same expression the whole time.
It's your word against mine, isn't it?
I could do away with you right now, couldn't I?
Detective Superintendent Ken Probert. Could this man have attacked other women?
There's a very good chance he has. These women were particularly humiliated by the attacks. We know that on 2 occasions.
Good evening, Crimewatch. Yes, that's right, it is.
It was wonderful when the lady phoned up, because she, for the last 6 years, had held the knowledge that that person that had done that to her was still out and about on the streets. That gave it a bit more impetus, because we knew that, yes, this is a serial rapist, and we have just got to catch him.
Right, so everyone, attention. As we hoped, the Crimewatch appeal, which went out last night, was excellent. We had about 200 calls into the TV studio and about 100 more into here, with the promise of more to come over the next few days. That means we've now got a total of approximately 1,200 names to check against the matrix to prioritise.
The matrix was basically superimposing the details we knew on other details that profilers and people knew about our offender and being able to give them a score. So everyone that came into the incident room out of those 1,200 names ended up with a score. And the higher the score, the closer they matched the offender, so therefore they were the ones we went and swabbed first. We had to then set about trying to find the person. The only really way to do that is to get DNA samples from the people you want to speak to during an inquiry.
Forensics is that this offender is connected to another rape. His DNA is identical. Also, we've had a couple of calls into the TV studio from 2 different women claiming to have been attacked by that man. One of them says she was raped by him 6 years ago. Phil.
There's actually a national database of people who are on the DNA database, and this person wasn't on there. We just had a profile of somebody, but who? We didn't know.
That reconstruction just brought it all back. It was him. And I'm sorry I didn't report it. I'm sorry I didn't. I couldn't stop what happened to that poor girl. I just couldn't. Promise me you'll get him.
Well, we're doing the best we can. I can't promise.
No, promise me. Promise me you'll get him and put him away. Don't let him do it again.
All that emotion over the last 6 years that have been bottled up came out, and it made me really want to do my absolute best.
It's definitely the same person?
Yep.
You're
well,
sure?
He didn't see anything himself, but he reckons his brother did. Yeah.
18th of April. R-E-Y-N-O...
I know, but we've got to check it. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Cheers.
The other thing was on Friday the 22nd of March. Could you hang on? Yeah, I'm going to have to call you back. Something's coming. An alias?
Yeah.
Right. Tell the team Paul Johnson is actually Paul Reynolds.
OK.
We'll reprofile them using the information on both names.
Two people can phone in, the same person, but under a different name or under an alias, or one person just gives the Christian name. When we actually reprofiled him under both names, he went up the system and scored much higher, which then made him, together with the fact his name was in the room 3 times, the #1 suspect.
It's your word against mine, isn't it?
I can't describe that moment of fear when he did what he did, and I relive that moment all the time, and it has nothing to do with the person that did it. It's just the fear that it happened. Words can't describe him. How dare he have done that to me and to my family. For him, it was just an opportunity that he just had to grab, because he's just a disgusting, foul human being.
We couldn't find Reynolds anywhere. It was almost like he didn't exist. We needed to eliminate him, and the only way we thought of doing it was by going to his parents. We all know that we get our DNA from our parents, and therefore it seemed the logical thing to do.
We're here to ask if you would be willing to allow us to take a mouth swab of your DNA.
Nobody has to give their DNA when they're approached by police officers for a mass screen. It is purely for an elimination purposes. We compared both mother's and father's DNA against our offender's DNA. And what that showed us was that there were very, very strong similarities between combined DNA and our offender. So therefore, he was now really Mr. #1.
Police have taken the unusual step of naming a man they want to speak to about 2 rapes in the area. The 2 were linked by DNA evidence.
Paul Reynolds is likely to be in the Brighton area. He's been seen camping on the seafront in recent weeks. He's thought to be living in a green tent. Anyone who thinks they've seen him should contact Sussex Police.
Look, come here.
It's funny, I mean, the lady that phoned in is a dog walker. And aren't they always dog walkers? Lady who goes out every day, just not aware of the significance that she's seeing until we ask her to look out for it, and she thinks that's the one, and phoned in.
The green tent near the bushes by the cliff's edge. Over.
Roger, Rodine Road and Madeira Drive, over.
Oh, buddy, believe it, I drive past that spot every day. I'm going to go around the front.
Okay.
Get forensics down there as soon as possible.
Yeah, okay.
You tell Steve we're on our way, have you?
Everybody's briefed.
Yep.
Where he was amazing because it's quite a busy road along the seafront, and many, many people have driven past there every day.
When I found out he'd been arrested, I was very, very on edge. Fear, excitement, dread, complete apathy. A whole load of things went through my head because I'll have to go and identify him. And it will have to kind of be a turning point for me in how I deal with it. I thought that will kind of be very scary. When I walked into the room where the ID parade was and I saw all these people, my heart was pounding, I was nervous, I think I was shaking. I kind of blocked out all sorts of stuff and was very aware of the task in hand. I also thought, gosh, what if I don't recognise him? I've always assumed that if I ever saw him again, I would recognise him. You know, this is like my worst nightmare come true. I'm about to come face to face with that person. But when I saw him, I just stood in front of him and I tried to get up some reaction or emotion in myself, but there wasn't one.
I believe that you physically assaulted her, and I believe that you did force her to have sexual intercourse against her will.
No.
Did you do that?
No.
We felt at that point we had enough to charge him, and we did. And within hours of that, the DNA came back saying, yes, he was our man. And that was just the real icing on the cake, really.
Apparently the jury were away for 15 minutes. That must be a very short time. He's dangerous, and I'm glad he's in prison and will be for some time.
In October last year, Paul Reynolds was sentenced to 12 years.
Now to some CCTV. Occasionally the pictures are crystal clear, but sometimes, let's face it, they're pretty fuzzy. In fact, often you wonder how people could possibly recognise anyone. But they do. A theft at a Surrey jeweller's, and we only took one call, but it named a fraudster, Glenn Grattan, who was traced to Wandsworth Prison. He was on remand awaiting sentencing for other offences and was charged with this one too. One of the rules of Crimewatch is that we never claim that viewers have helped to solve a crime unless detectives say so too. And the best testimony comes from senior investigating officers themselves. Here's the head of Sussex CID, Sarah Payne.
As a working detective, it's pretty unusual to find myself presenting an appeal on one of my own cases. The murder of Sarah Payne was one of the most tragic crimes in recent years, and without your help, Roy Whiting might never have been convicted. In November 2000, we showed this reconstruction about the abduction and murder of 8-year-old Sarah Payne. We had a terrific response from callers, but unfortunately, no new hard evidence emerged. Several of you named Roy Whiting, already our prime suspect. He was a local man who'd already served time for abducting a little girl.
At what stage did you take hold of that little girl, put her into your van?
No comment.
Did you have to force her into the van?
No comment.
Help me out, I don't know, I wasn't there. Did she get into the van voluntarily?
No comment.
With Whiting saying nothing and little evidence against him, we had to let him go. In January 2001, we decided on a new appeal to Crimewatch viewers. I thought it was a long shot. Now, I had a great response from Crimewatch on the last occasion, but if we can crack this, then it could prove absolutely crucial. Now, we've recovered this curtain, which holds vital clues. Although we couldn't say so at the time, the curtain had been recovered from Roy Whiting's van, and a fibre from it was found in the Velcro strap of one of Sarah's shoes. A viewer recognised the curtain and remembered she had left it in her ex-boyfriend's white van before the vehicle was sold on to Whiting. It proved that Sarah had almost certainly been in Whiting's van. This, together with other fibres and one of Sarah's hairs on Roy Whiting's sweatshirt, made the forensic case compelling.
You are charged that between Saturday the 1st of July 2000 and Monday the 3rd of July 2000 at Kingston Gorse, West Sussex, or elsewhere, you murdered Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne, and that's contrary to common law.
Whiting pleaded not guilty and put Sarah's family through the ordeal of a 5-week trial.
This doesn't make us happy, but justice has been done. Sarah can rest in peace now.
The judge has ordered that he should never be released.
Now, 4 faces that appeared on Crimewatch, and then, thanks to you, in court. Richard Appiah was wanted for fraud when we showed his face last November. He was recognised by a manager and 5 staff at a hotel in Aberdeen where he was working, and police were quickly on the doorstep. In January, Richard Appiah pleaded guilty to 12 charges of false accounting and was sentenced to youth custody for 12 months. Sid Carr is a bully, involved in domestic violence, and was guilty of an extremely vicious assault. 2 Crimewatch viewers recognised his picture and gave an address in Ireland. He was extradited last summer, found guilty of wounding, and was sentenced to 15 months. Michael Matthews was wanted for sex offences against a 7-year-old girl. He'd been charged, but failed to turn up at Derby Crown Court. We showed his picture last May, and though he wasn't traced directly, viewers were able to identify his friends. They led detectives to Nottingham, and Michael Matthews has been sentenced to 6 years for 8 counts of indecent assault. In a quarrel at a nightclub, Anthony Fenwick chewed off a man's ear. He then absconded from his trial and set himself up with a new life, cutting all his previous ties. But he was recognised after an appeal on Crimewatch and is now serving 3 years and 9 months for GBH with intent and jumping bail.
25 viewers from across the UK rang in to solve the next crime, and one of them insisted she was absolutely sure who the offender was and where he was. After all, she said, she worked with him in Bristol. He was wanted for a violent sex crime against a student miles away in High Wycombe.
I was just walking back from the student union. I had noticed him outside one of the houses. I didn't really pay much attention though, just kept on walking. I just got past him, and then the next thing I knew, he just got hold of me. He kept on shouting, struggling, and that's when he got scared and let me go.
He'd come very close to actually raping this girl, and a couple of minutes extra and he probably would have done it, and that's an awful thing to happen to anybody. So I was, confident that he would do it again if he wasn't caught.
Detective Sergeant Murden had a stroke of luck when a colleague recognised the girl's description of the offender. Sivaraja Sivakaran was already suspected of another attack, but this time the witness picked him out on an ID parade. He was given bail pending trial last November.
Just before November, he went missing and nobody knew where he'd gone, so he just disappeared into the ether almost, really.
And because of fears he'd rape again, detectives came to Crimewatch.
I was just at home by myself watching TV, and, well, I wasn't really watching TV, I was on the phone to my mum at the time. And then Siv's face came up with his name, and when they said his name, it's unmistakable.
He worked with her in a pub in Bristol.
We had nothing to indicate he had any connections to the Bristol area at all. So we spoke with our colleagues that covered that part of Bristol, and they said, well, leave it with us, we'll do what we can.
When Siv came into work, there was police in the pub at that point, but they were upstairs with the manager in the office, and I think we'd seen him coming in on the CCTV. He was just, standing by the bar, and they just went in and arrested him. Didn't put up any resistance at all. He was laughing, just smiling, basically as if to say, well, I don't really care.
He was given 4 years, 9 months for the attempt rape and a further 3 months consecutively for absconding from bail, so 5 years in total.
It is a huge relief to know that he's behind bars, because that means that he can't do it to anyone else.
On Crimewatch on Thursday, banged up on Saturday. That's what happened to a prolific bank robber, Graham Wright from Preston. This is a reconstruction, but at times you'll hear his real voice taken from the interviews he gave to the police.
What can you tell me about those building societies?
Right, how do you mean tell you about the building societies?
Well, tell me, are you responsible first of all for those robberies at those premises?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Can you tell me how you went about it?
I hadn't actually picked the building society out. I didn't know which building society. I just know I needed to get hold of money, and that's how I was going to do it. I waited till there was hardly anybody in there. I waited till lunchtime, and I just thought at lunchtime there's going to be less staff on. It's busier on the streets, so I'm going to disappear easier.
Yeah.
Walked to the door, then went in. Went to the lady cashier at the end. I think she was the only one there on the actual counter. Gave her the note. I did have my hand in my pocket at the time. And then she basically gave the money and I walked out.
Yeah. How much did you get away with on that occasion?
£500 or £600.
What did he say?
Don't look at the other staff. Don't press the alarm. Just pass me the money and you'll be okay.
Armed robbery, at the end of the day, is a very serious offence. It's at the top end of the scale, really. It takes a certain type of person to go into a building society with a firearm, be it imitation or genuine, and to make that kind of demand.
Oh, fine. A bit tired.
CCTV now from across the country will tell you where they are, it tells who they are. Each robbery is identified by the place where it happened.
I need a peel off.
Are you all right?
Do you make us a cup of tea? Let's have some biscuits. Come on.
Graham, I was watching that.
Well, it doesn't matter.
The response from Crimewatch was phenomenal. During the course of the evening, the name Graham Wright was coming to the fore more and more. After 30 telephone calls that we had taken, 50% of them was actually consistently putting this man's name forward.
Any of them check out yet?
No, not yet.
What we didn't have was, what does Graham Wright look like? We had nothing to compare the name Graham Wright to. So one of the first things we actually did when we came back to division was find out what we knew on our police national computer in relation to Graham, see if he had any previous, if he had any form.
Is yours, Bill?
No, not yet. I'm only halfway through. Yourself?
Could be. Wainwright's got previous. Lincolnshire Police charged him 6 months ago for making off with a petrol station without paying. I'm going to give them a ring now. Good afternoon. It's DS Besant from Preston CID. I'm making inquiries about...
Fortunately for us, Lincoln had his photograph on file, and we asked if they'd email it over to us, which they did.
What more information have you got on him,
There was
please?
myself and Bill and my other colleagues, and we were just sat around my PC just waiting for the email to appear.
Bill, look at this.
And I think I'll probably always remember
This
that.
picture's coming up.
The picture started opening up from the bottom of the screen. Rising to the top, you got to see his chin, then his nose, and it was the glasses, the hair, everything.
Taking its time, though.
Well, they do, don't they? Jim, just pass me the photo on there, please. Thank you. What do you think?
Promising.
That is him.
Yes.
That is
It
our...
was fantastic. Right down to his glasses, to his facial expression, to his hairstyle. There was no doubt at all in anybody's mind that this was the man. He did have a confirmed address in Southport, which is part of Merseyside, and just borders with Lancashire, so it was only maybe 25 miles down the road.
Who are you looking for, love?
Looking for Graham Wright.
No, that's his girlfriend's house. He's got a place down Scaresbrook Road.
Scaresbrook Road. Do you happen to know what car he drives?
Yeah, he's got a little red Nissan Micra.
Nissan Micra. Right, that's great. Thanks very much.
All right, no
Cheers,
trouble.
love.
He's changed his car.
DC Gabbett to control.
DC Gabbett, go ahead.
Yeah, can you get a patrol to attend Scaresbrook Road? I'm looking for a red Nissan Micra parked in that vicinity. Can you get the patrol to get back ASAP, please? Okay.
Received, Scaresbrook Road.
I think we perhaps waited maybe a couple of hours, the initial address that morning. There was a lot of sort of like knuckle biting going on and sweaty palms and everything.
No. No, sir, not seen him yet.
Control to DC Gabbett.
I don't know when.
DC Gabbett to control, go ahead.
There's no red Nissan Micra parked in Scaresbrook Road.
Right, thanks for looking. Over.
The bottom went from everything, really. It was a case of the DI wants us back in the division now. He's told us to call it a day. We hadn't got any result with finding this vehicle. Everyone was very downhearted. They could see everything that they put a lot of time and effort into just gradually slipping away. I remember saying to Bill, let's give it one more try. Let's have a drive down Scaresbrook Road. Let's see for ourselves if we could actually see his car. It was a last-ditch attempt. It was probably some kind of an indication as to how desperate we both were, really, to try and want to get to the bottom of this and get hold of Wright.
That is a Micra.
Excellent.
It is. Yeah.
Keep going. Who's that there? That's him, isn't it?
I couldn't believe what I was seeing, what was unfolding in front of me. Graham Wright came straight out. Wasn't suspecting of anything or anybody. Like I say, it was a drama that was just unfolding there and then.
Graham Wright.
Who's asking?
The adrenaline started going then.
DC Gabbett from Preston
Been expecting
CID.
you.
What's going on? You're under arrest for armed robbery. You don't have to say anything unless you wish to do so, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something you later on in court.
Where are you taking him?
Preston Police Station. We can explain more then. Okay.
In the back of the car, he's telling me about jobs that he's done, not of sort of like minor crime, but telling me of major criminal offences that he'd committed not only in our own force area, but in other forces within the UK. It was like a dream come true, really. Graham just wanted to get everything off his chest.
Did you have any weapons on your person?
I got rid of that deliberately because on the first occasion, not in Preston, the first time I ever did it, the look of horror on the lady's face, and I just thought about it. I don't really want to harm anybody, I never did. I know it sounds stupid, but, well, I always said thank you, and on one occasion I think I said I'm sorry.
I wouldn't suggest that Graham is your average criminal, and I'm not saying this is an excuse for him. It is a very, very serious offence, And when you look at the fact that he's received 9 years after admitting everything quite freely and getting everything off his chest, it is still a significant term of imprisonment.
Next, one of the appeals that caused an enormous sense of outrage. As a result, 2 youths are in prison. But we still need help to catch the others.
One Saturday evening last September, Ken, a father of 2, was travelling home from work on the number 36, heading to Lewisham in southeast London. A routine journey till 5 rowdy youths got on at Vauxhall Bridge Road. One of them grabbed the only empty seat, found biscuits on it and started throwing them at other passengers.
It seemed like he was either on something or he just wasn't all there. Some of the biscuits touched me. I then said to him politely, "Why don't you just brush the biscuits on the floor, I'll give you a hand." And then he became really aggressive, started swearing at me.
At Vauxhall Bridge, the aggressive boys got off, and the whole bus applauded Ken's courage for intervening. Then seconds later, they returned and went back to attack him. They laid into him, but he pushed them down the stairs, and they fell out onto the street.
We landed outside on the floor. Luckily, I landed on top of 2 of them. Then I felt the first guy behind me on my, sort of like on my back, and he had both of his fingers in my eyes, like feeling around. He was pushing into my right eye. I didn't feel anything. Maybe it was the adrenaline, I don't know. And I didn't realise my eye had been pulled out.
Ken spent 2 months in hospital, but surgeons couldn't save his right eye and only just saved him from total blindness. He's been left with only 40% vision. One of the attackers, Wesley Foster, was caught on the night of the attack running away from the scene. But police still needed to find the others and asked us to appeal for help. About 25 calls came in on the night, mostly of high quality. 2 passengers from the bus came forward, both of whom became important witnesses at the trial. And names were offered for the whole gang, including that of Thomas Jennings. Both Jennings and the youth who'd been running away were picked out on ID parades, and they were both found guilty of violent disorder and GBH. They were each sentenced to 4 years. Thomas Jennings wasn't responsible for the actual blinding of Ken, but the judge said you were responsible for the violent enterprise that you joined and promoted. You've not shown one scrap of pity or remorse for your part in the violence.
Whoever deliberately blinded Ken is still at large, and he's still a danger. So who are the other 2 members of the gang? Don't let them get away with it. Please call if you know them, and above all, if you saw anything. 0500 600 600.
Nick was saying how the call centre here at New Scotland Yard is the busiest in the world, and the man in charge of it is Superintendent Barry Clark. Barry, when people ring 999, it can be a matter of life or death, can't it? What's the most dramatic call you've ever had here?
I think the most distressing are those involving children, but quite the most extraordinary we had recently, where someone was tied up and gagged, dialed 999 with his nose, and we couldn't find out where he was, so we had to go through the alphabet with him for him to grunt at the appropriate time to find out where he
Because of course
is.
he couldn't speak because he was gagged. They're not always that serious though, are they? I've just had someone ringing in complaining because he's been stuck in traffic for an hour. I mean, what's the most ridiculous call you've ever had to 999?
Possibly a woman who rang to say that the curry that she'd ordered was too hot and rang 999 for police to sort it out.
You're joking.
That's what people do.
Let's be clear then, when should you call 999?
Well, you should call 999 when a crime is happening now or someone is in immediate danger. And that can be quite extreme. If you came home and found your house burgled and the door open, you didn't know if anyone was there, of course dial 999 and we will come. But if it's obvious that the burglary had happened several hours ago, in slower time, ring the local police station and leave the 999 lines open for those that really need emergency assistance.
The thing is, people don't necessarily know the number of their local police station, do they? So how do they go about it?
I'd like people to find out what their number of the local police station is and keep it written down by their telephone or program it into your mobile phone. so you know what it is.
And talking of mobile phones, they could be a problem for you as well, can't they?
Yes, a huge problem. People can accidentally dial 999 on their mobile phone, even when it's key locked. And we deal with that by putting them through on a separate line on a computer switch, which will analyse to ensure that it's a proper call. And only real calls will be allowed through into the room. Now, we take 25,000 of these a day, but we filter them out. And so far, we've dealt with 3,500. And if they were allowed into the room, they would totally overwhelm us.
OK, Barry, thanks very much.
Sometimes a single call from a single viewer is like flicking a switch. It solves the riddle. In the next case, it was much more complicated, but not surprisingly, since the crime had baffled everyone for close on 30 years.
In the early 1970s, there were 3 murders in South Wales, all of teenage girls who'd been travelling home at night. Paul Bethell was then a young detective.
Well, events first started in July of 1973 when the body of Sandra Newton was found in a disused culvert.
Sandra was 16. She'd been out for a drink with her boyfriend in Briton Ferry just outside Neath. She left him sometime after midnight to walk the 5 miles home.
She was carried down off the embankment out of the motor vehicle, and she was laid quite reverently, I think it has to be said, on the stones here in the culvert. She had an injury, a bruise to the right side of her chin, and she'd in fact been strangled with her own skirt. Within 8 weeks of the discovery of Sandra, the bodies of Geraldine and Pauline were found at Llandarcy.
Pauline Floyd and Geraldine Hughes had been out for a night in Swansea, and like many young people at the time, they hitched a ride back home. But they never arrived. Their bodies were found in a copse near the village of Llandarcy.
It's always been one of the enigmas about this whole case as to what exactly happened in the copse. We know that the girls must have been together. We know that at some stage when they were attacked they were together, because Geraldine's blood was found on Pauline's coat. And then Geraldine had somehow come round and tried to run off. This man, thinking he had left both girls for dead, heard Geraldine trying to make her escape and come back into the copse, chased her and sadly caught her. Both young girls had received substantial blows to the top of the head. At some stage then both girls were raped and they were strangled.
There was a massive investigation, but at the time there was nothing to prove a link between the Llandarcy killings and the murder of Sandra Newton 8 weeks before. And though there were eventually almost 35,000 people in the inquiry system, there was nothing to identify the killer. So late in 1974, the investigation was scaled down. But unsolved murders are never abandoned, and in 1990, with the advent of DNA techniques, Paul Bethell decided to take another look.
The clothing of all 3 girls had always been kept at the laboratory. We knew that we had crime scene stains, and so the potential was there. It was just a matter of seeing if the new technology could help us in any way.
We tried some crime stains from the girls, but unfortunately the technology then wasn't sensitive enough. But we had the presence of mind to keep material back, knowing that there was future advances coming.
For a further 8 years, nothing happened. But by 1998, DNA techniques had advanced enough to have another go.
We started to produce a profile. And over the period of the next 18 months or so, we managed to get a full profile of the crime stain and the male offender.
But now they had a DNA profile, who, if any, of all the people in the inquiry did it match? The police had to prioritise, so 2 detectives were asked to select the top 500 prospects.
You have to believe that the individual is in the case papers, and then you have to climb into your time machine, as it were, and go back to 1973 and look for that individual.
It's quite a daunting task in that there was up to 35,000 people who were spoken to at some point in relation to the murders. Myself and DC Bale were in this room more or less for 8 months. Due to the amount of paperwork here, one lapse of concentration, and we could have lost the killer.
Over 30 years, obviously, people had moved away, moved to other parts of the UK. How did we find these people all over the country? Well, certainly I felt that Crimewatch was the answer.
In January last year, we featured the case with spectacular results.
You've had an avalanche of calls, an avalanche of names.
Yes, absolutely overwhelmed by the calls, Nick. We've had a combination of people from the original case papers 27 years ago, fresh names that we're interested in now and we need to look at, witnesses from the night in question. So we've got a great deal of work to do. I recall taking calls myself in the studio, and we were actually asked by the studio staff to stop answering the phones because they needed to close the studio and clean up.
Crimewatch had appealed on the 2 killings at Llandarcy, but around the same time there was a scientific breakthrough on the murder of Sandra Newton.
We were supplied with her boyfriend's sample for elimination purposes, and when we compared his profile and her profile, we realised that there was a third person there. And looking at the profile, I realised there were similarities between that and the Llandarcy case. So I knew the profile almost off by heart at that point. When I compared them, it was an exact match.
In essence, we knew then, for the first time in 28 years, that the murders of Sandra, Geraldine and Pauline were committed by the same man.
One name that came in through Crimewatch was Joseph William Cappan. He was already on the police priority list of 500, but they now took a closer look at him. 30 years back, he'd been suspected by a detective now retired, Elwyn Whedon.
When I found out that a white 1100 motor car was involved in the murders at Llandarcy, I knew that Joe Cappan was the owner of a white 1100 motor car. He fitted the description of the person that we were looking for, and as a result, I decided to submit his name into the inquiry.
Listen, lads, I've got someone you can have a look at here. This chap may be worth having a look at if you want to take a few notes.
Aye, let me get a card.
Yeah. Kappa, the name is. Joseph Kappa.
Joseph Kappa.
Port Talbot. Now, he's got a Morris 1100, and it's white.
Oh.
And the registration is 6803DF.
6803.
Yeah, he's got bushy hair, fits the bill. I think he might be worth having a look at.
I'll put him in the system and we'll give him a visit.
All right.
Thanks,
Cheers,
mate.
lads. All the best.
Take care. Mr. Cappan? Joe Cappan?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, DC Thomas Phillips from Port Talbot Police Station. And if we could ask you a few questions. We're investigating the Llandarcy murder about the 2 girls. As you know, we're trying to trace all the owners of light-coloured Austin 1100. And we just wanted to eliminate you from an inquiry, really. Do you mind if I take some fingerprint samples and some fibre samples from the car?
No, carry on. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Cappan. Can I have the key?
Sure.
Mr. Cappan, would you like to tell me where you were on the night of the 15th of September?
Well, I was at the bird show with my canaries in Morriston in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Then I decided to go to the Neath Fair.
I suppose I left there about 9:30, and then I got home, watched a bit of TV.
I seen to my birds, and I went to bed.
Right.
Cappan's story appeared to check out, so he simply became another name in the system.
Hi, Elwyn. Right.
Did you call in and see Mr. Cappan after?
Yeah, we gave him a call. He had an alibi.
Nothing. Nothing at all?
Well, we taken tapings from the car.
Yeah.
Nothing came back.
Okay.
No similar fibres.
No
Okay.
similar
You're off down the pub after?
Yes, yeah.
Hey, we'll see you down there.
We'll see you.
Ta-da.
Yeah, bye. Bye.
So, ruled out in 1973, but now Joe Cappan was looked at once again, and there was a surefire way to rule him in or out for good. They simply needed his DNA.
When the research team went to visit the house in order, as they thought at that time, to obtain a mouth swab or buccal swab from him, we were informed by his family that in fact he had died from a protracted illness in 1990.
The police approached members of his family and obtained DNA samples, and from that we could work out a partial profile for Joe Cappan himself. It wasn't a full profile. When we compared that to the Llandarcy and the Sandra Newton crime stains, it was clear he could not be excluded at that stage. As he was dead and had been buried, the only way to get a sample from him would be to have an exhumation.
So earlier this year, Joseph Cappan became the first ever murder suspect to be exhumed.
We needed to do this to put a lot of matters to rest for the families of Cappan, for the families of the girls, to show that the individual lying in that grave was in fact the same individual that had left that crime scene stain at Llandarcy and Tonmawr.
In June, 30 years after the murders, came confirmation that Cappen's DNA did match that found on all 3 girls.
As soon as we had the confirmation that Cappen was the killer, the first thing we did was to go and visit the families. It was nice for us to sit in their living room with a cup of tea and basically tell them that we now knew who in fact had killed their daughter.
Finding the killer now has meant that we can put the bad times behind us and perhaps look at the good times and the fun she had.
It's just relief for both families so that they can get on with their lives and put this matter to rest.
It's a very strange feeling to have worked in 1973 as a 21-year-old, as a young detective in those days, and then eventually led the team that actually found the killer. That's probably something that it's fair to say every detective would wish for.
Paul, Joe Cappen's dead now. He's been dead, what, 12 years, but you've still got a major incident room running. Now, tell us what's going on.
Yes, we still need to timeline Cappen. I need to know where he has been, where he was for some 28, 29 years, between 1960 and 1988. Of course, we know he died in 1990. What part of the countries did he visit? We know that he's travelled to the north of England, that he visited the Lincolnshire area, where he had family some years ago. But I really need to know where this man has been.
Why are you so anxious so long after his death?
Well, I've always been of the view that if this man was capable of killing 3 young girls within 2 to 3 miles virtually of his own home, using his own car, then certainly he would have no qualms whatsoever about killing elsewhere or in fact attacking young women in other parts of the country.
Of course, he was a professional driver, so he travelled a lot, which means he could have committed crimes anywhere.
That's right. We know that he was employed as a driver. He drove buses, he drove lorries, and what I would ask is for employers to have a look at the photograph, the name, and search their memories to see, did they employ this man as a driver many years ago?
I don't want to ask you to sensationalise things, but is it your view that he is likely to be an even worse serial killer than we already know about?
Well, the truth is, of course, we don't really know, but certainly I have the feeling that this man would have killed elsewhere in the country. If this man will attack within a few miles of his own home, using his own car, in an area that he would have been known to people, then certainly I feel in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, he would have no concerns whatsoever about carrying out some serious crime.
What about crimes well short of murder? Just terrifying women, attacking them, rape?
Yes, well, we've had a number of calls already from women that have come forward that were attacked some decades ago, in fact 2 or 3 decades ago, by Cappen. They've now told us their stories, and what I would ask is if there are any women out there that know Cappen, that had met him and had any sort of experience with him whatsoever, if they would make contact with us.
OK, if there's any way you think you can help, please call 0500 600 600.
Viewers from Merseyside helped solve the next one, a terrifying raid on a frozen food warehouse in Skelmersdale.
2 men came through this door and entered this office, pulling on balaclavas as they did so, and then burst into this office. One remained in the corner there. The second one had Mr. Hannah up, pinned against the wall there, with a large knife underneath his chin.
He's safe! Even now, it's like a nightmare. Yeah, I feel like I'm talking about somebody else. Get out of here! The police are on the way!
The robbers panicked and ran off empty-handed. Ray Hannah was telling the police what had happened when he collapsed and died.
The widow of a factory owner murdered in West Lancashire by armed robbers has made an appeal for help to catch her husband's killers.
Even though they came to our factory intending to rob us, I don't honestly believe that they had this terrible outcome in mind.
We had outstanding fingerprints in the vehicle that we recovered, and we hadn't got a name to put to the fingerprints. For many, many weeks, we worked very, very hard, but got nowhere to actually try and identify these offenders. So we needed some help from the public, so Crimewatch was the obvious place to go to.
And immediately there was a great response.
Mike, a lot of calls, 3 people seen running away. We've got their names, you know who they are.
We've got a lot of names put forward tonight, Nick, particularly from the South Lancashire and Merseyside areas, which is very encouraging.
We've probably in total about 30 calls, 2 in particular named a Michael Ginley.
And when police checked his fingerprints, they matched those in the car, and trainers found in his house matched shoe marks at the warehouse. Despite the scientific evidence, Michael Ginley insisted on a full trial and covered up for the two men who were with him on the raid. He was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 12 years.
Last November, we asked for help to trace Melville Wilms. He'd worked as a carer for a severely disabled man, but had secretly drained his savings. A viewer called to say he was working at a hotel in Bath. Wilms pleaded guilty and was given 20 months. The doorman of a London club watched Crimewatch in March last year and saw one of his club regulars was wanted in connection with a rape. So when Robin Woods next turned up, the doorman contacted the police. Detectives arrested Robin Woods outside. He was tried at the Old Bailey last October, was found guilty of 2 rapes and is now serving 8 years. Jason Scott committed 4 armed robberies. We appealed in February last year. 4 days afterwards, someone walked into a police station and told them they'd seen Jason Scott driving around their neighbourhood. A local squad car found him later the same day, and he's been sent to prison for 9 years. Colin Anderson had a habit of befriending women, then tricking them out of their savings. He was wanted by police in Sussex, but a viewer rang in with an address in Liverpool. The caller even mentioned Anderson was driving a black Scorpio, which was information we'd withheld, so the tip-off was prioritised. Local police arrested him as he was packing his bags to make a getaway. He's been sentenced to 2.5 years.
Stephen Jackson is a big man, often violent and dysfunctional. He was part of a drugs ring in Bishop Auckland, but when police in County Durham went to arrest him, they found he disappeared. Eventually, they came to Crimewatch.
4 faces for you to track down now, see if you know any of them. Here's Stephen Jackson. Call 0500 600 600.
Immediately, we had a cluster of calls, not from Bishop Auckland, but from over 150 miles away, from around the Potteries, and especially Stoke-on-Trent.
The programme was still on air when we made contact with the police in Staffordshire, and within, realistically, about 10 minutes, I believe it was, they'd managed to put together a team of officers.
What number is it again? 33.
Yeah.
Stephen, you've been on Crimewatch. I'd get out if I were you.
What?
I've just seen your photo.
There it is.
Potentially for us, it was a disaster. We could be back to square one, not knowing at all where he was going to be. Having already used the Crimewatch programme, we'd be a little bit at a loss as to where we could go from there, really.
On an impulse, Stephen Jackson went into the shop, ordered cigarettes, and pulled a knife out. As he later told police, he was chased by everyone, including the kitchen sink.
Back off! Kick him! Back off, or either I'll use it!
Just give some money.
You want your money?
Yeah, just give some money.
You want your money, eh? You want the money? That's all you get!
Let him go.
Drive the car!
What?
Move it!
I can't, it's not mine.
Just drive the car!
Right.
I got a bit scared. What if he stabs me or something?
Just get going, all right?
Okay. Look, just stop waving that, please. The police will pull us over.
All right!
He was getting all aggressive.
Just keep going and you won't get hurt.
All right.
But if I talked to him, I'd calm him down, like.
What have you done?
What do you think I've done, eh?
I don't know.
Look, I just robbed something, all right? They had most of it back.
I had to try something to help myself. I couldn't just keep driving. And several cars drove past, which I was flashing at. Try to attract their attention.
Turn left here.
All right.
Just turn left.
Look,
down here, all right?
Yeah, okay, right.
Stop on the left here.
Here.
Stop here.
Right.
Right. This is as far as you're going, all right, son?
Stoke-on-Trent police had no reason to know the robber had been Jackson. It wasn't until detectives travelled down from County Durham that the connection was made. And even then, it was mostly because the two key officers happened to know each other.
If you get anything else, give us a call on my mobile, yeah? All right. Yep, cheers. Bloody hell, mate. Good to see you.
How you doing?
All right, yeah, take a seat.
Brilliant.
How you doing then?
Not so bad. And yourself?
Don't ask. So what are you doing in the area?
Still after that bloke on Crimewatch, Jackson.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that. Sorry, lads, couldn't get him for you. So you think he's still in this area?
Possibly. We're doing a local appeal using his photograph just to see if it generates anything.
What's he look like?
Well, it's an old photo, but basically he's a tall, overweight Geordie. He's a big lad.
How big exactly? What, 6 foot?
Easy. 6'2", 6'3". Why?
Well, that sounds like the description from the job yesterday.
You're joking?
Yeah.
Can I have a look?
Yeah. Does that sound like him?
That's the one.
It was too much of a coincidence that it couldn't be him, really, in the Stoke-on-Trent area. And that was how we came to put 2 and 2 together between us, really.
We went on the intelligence system then, checked out, and sure enough, there was an address in Cobridge for him.
We're in position at the back of the house.
OK, we're nearly there. Stand by. OK, that's nice and easy. You follow me.
Again, the frustration, and the TV was actually running with the local news on. He obviously was somewhere, and he was somewhere nearby. He knew the net was tightening around him. He knew he had less and less places to go.
He can't go back up to Durham. He can't stay in Stoke-on-Trent. I think his options are running out. And the pressure must have got too much. He suddenly realised that he just couldn't go on like this. I think enough was enough.
Right, we'll go in there, you'll be arrested. When you're booked into custody, I'll get the chance to speak with the officers. Once I've spoken with the officers, I'll speak with you.
You're going to do all the talking, yeah?
Yeah, I'll speak with you, and then we'll get you in and get you interviewed, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right?
It turned out there was a bit more of a motive as to why he wanted to hand himself in down here.
Jackson had become unpopular in the Bishop Auckland area and feared for his safety from other criminals that he'd upset. He was very, very keen to be dealt with down here in Stoke-on-Trent. That meant, automatically, he would go to a prison in this area. I think if we'd never had the conversation, Jackson would still be out and about on the loose today.
These are just a few of the cases Crimewatch viewers have helped to solve over the last year.
We'll be back next month on the 26th of September with new appeals. You can contact us via our website at www.bbc.co.uk/crime, where you can also see more details from tonight's programme.
And thanks for all your help. There's a lot more good than bad out there. So don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.